Hello, it's 22nd of January 2010, and this is my third vlog, and I wanted to talk about some correct myths. The viewer asked me to actually tell a couple, and I do know several. There's some stories that I recorded in the field, and then there are quite a few that were recorded about 100 years ago by Waldemar Bogaraz and Jakobson. Bogaraz published this book, Koryak Texts, and you can download that. It's in public domain because it's really old from my website. It's not very fun to read. It looks like that. I've republished some of those stories with a new translation following ethnopoetic analysis, which you can also download. But then Jakobson has this really weird, big, thick book, which, yes, you can also download from the web. It's hard to find in real bookness. I mentioned that Raven, Quiquinyaku, and his wife Miti and his children, Amamkut is his son, and Inyangamut is his daughter, and there's other characters in his household as well. They're all ravens and into sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And detachable genitals are part of some of their stories. Koryaks aren't the only ones with detachable genitals in their stories. There is, of course, the famous King Crimson song, Detachable Penis, which I would like to post, but I think those guys aren't dead yet. So I'm kind of loath to violate copyright of artists and things who, they're still working. The other famous example that I know of is in Paul Radin's book of trickster myths, Winnebago Native Americans in kind of central Midwestern United States. Their tales of the trickster transformer includes at least one episode where he detaches his penis and sends it across the lake to seduce a maiden in the village that he had just visited and wanted to avoid detection by her father, and so just sent the important bits to visit her, and then came back when it was finished. In another part, he coils it up and puts it in a box, which is another great example of male fantasy transcending cultural differences. But in among Koryaks, genitals come apart and can be sent off for various activities. There's one story, I don't actually remember much of the rest of the story, except that Quiquinyaku and Miti both detach their genitals, turn them into little dogs, and send them off to the other to relay messages back and forth. And Miti knows whose dog that is as soon as it starts nosing underneath her parka, looking for its favorite spot. In the Jakobson collection, where Quiquinyaku is tired of it raining all the time. It's raining all the time, and people are starting to drown. It's becoming a deluge. And so before it gets too serious, then he flies up to the heavens to see what's going on and kind of sneaks in the house of the universe, who is a character with a house and a wife. And he sees Universe and his wife sitting there, and sees that Universe is squeezing his wife's clitoris, and that's making rain. So he waits for them to go to sleep, and while they're asleep, he removes Universe's wife's clitoris, dries it out by the fire, and then once it's nice and dry, he puts it back in its normal place, and lo and behold, the rain stops. He goes back home, and it's sunny all the time and nice. And one of my favorite stories is where the people are starving Quiquinyaku's household in the early spring and can't find any meat or fish or anything. They're going up the river trying to look for more fish. And in the late spring, of course, is often a hungry time. Amamkut says, well, I'm going to go to the sea and see if I can find some seals or something there, and I'll bring it back. And so the rest of the family is going up this river. And then they decide to stop, and Quiquinyaku says, oh, I know what we'll do. Why don't we all bend over and put our heads up our asses? And let's do that and see if that helps. And sure enough, it does. They find themselves meeting at a river that's full of fish, and they're eating greedily and filling themselves up with all this fish at the river. But of course, as the narrator explains, what they're doing is really just consuming their own shit, because that river is actually their intestines, and that fish is really just their own shit that they're eating because they've closed up the loop. The alimentary canal is not a one-way journey anymore. Now it's an infinite feedback loop, keeping them sated. But they don't die. Well, they are ravens after all, and do live long enough for Amamkut to come back with a seal, and he sees his whole family all curled up with their heads up their asses, and he's horrified at this and runs and pulls their heads out and says, "Look, here's real food. I have killed a seal. We have real food to eat. Eat this." So they do, and they live fine evermore after that. If you want to look at some more of these tales, both the modern translation that I've tried to do and publish, as well as these old-fashioned publications, they are available on the CoreyXNet website. Link in the show notes.